When Hotel Heiress Amara Bennett opened her penthouse door that stormy night, she had no idea the stranger stumbling into her life would shatter every wall she'd built around her heart. Luke Hayes was just a single father seeking shelter from the rain, but one accidental touch would awaken feelings she'd buried for a decade. What started as a simple act of kindness during a power outage would soon spiral into a scandalous romance that threatened everything Amara had worked to protect. Her father's empire, Luke's custody battle, and a vengeful ex-wife with dangerous connections were all about to collide in ways neither of them saw coming. But when the cameras started flashing and the rumors began to spread, would their love survive the storm they'd created? Subscribe if you're watching this, and tell me where you're from, because this love story will take you on an emotional journey you'll never forget. The rain drummed against the tall windows of the Bennett Harbor Hotel like a restless heartbeat. Inside the elegant lobby, golden light from crystal chandeliers flickered as the storm outside grew stronger. Amara Bennett moved through the space with quiet confidence, her heels clicking softly on the polished marble floor. At 29, she carried herself like someone who had learned early that the world was watching. Her dark hair was pulled back in a smooth bun, not a strand out of place. She wore a navy blazer that fit perfectly, and her brown eyes took in every detail around her, the way the staff moved, how the guests looked, whether everything was running as it should. The hotel was her responsibility. More than that, it was her life. "Ms. Bennett?" Rita Alvarez hurried over from the front desk, her usually calm face creased with worry. "The storm's getting worse. We've got guests backed up, and the computer system keeps glitching." Amara paused, turning toward Rita with the kind of patience that had taken years to learn. "How bad is the glitch?" "Room keys are mixing up. I've already had 2 problems, and I'm scared there might be more." Rita tucked a strand of graying hair behind her ear. "I'm so sorry. I know tonight's not the time for this." Through the windows, lightning split the sky. The lights above them flickered once, twice, then held steady. Amara could feel the tension in the lobby, guests looking around nervously, children pressing closer to their parents. "It's okay," she said to Rita. "Storms happen, computers act up. We just fix what we can and keep people safe." Her phone buzzed. Evelyn Cho, her chief of staff, was calling. "Evelyn," Amara answered as she walked toward the elevators. "Hey, just checking on the prep for tomorrow's board meeting. Your father wants to go over the quarterly numbers before." The lights flickered again, longer this time. In the distance, Amara could hear the low hum of the backup generators kicking in. "Can we talk about this upstairs?" Amara said, stepping into the elevator. "The storm's making everything a little crazy down here." "Of course. I'll email you the notes." The elevator doors closed, and for a moment, Amara was alone. She pressed the button for the top floor, her floor. The penthouse suite had been her home for 3 years now, ever since she'd taken over daily operations of the hotel group. It was easier to live here, she told herself. Convenient, close to work. The truth was simpler and harder. It was safe. No surprises, no one getting too close. The elevator hummed upward, carrying her away from the busy lobby and the storm outside. 3 floors below, Luke Hayes stood in front of the bathroom mirror in their small hotel room, trying to make his hair look less like he'd been caught in a hurricane, which, technically, he had been. "Daddy, are we safe?" Mia's voice was small behind him. She sat on one of the 2 beds, her legs swinging, not quite reaching the floor. Luke turned around and smiled at his 7-year-old daughter. Her dark blonde hair fell in waves around her shoulders, and her gray eyes, so much like his own, were wide with worry. "We're completely safe, sweetheart. This is a good hotel, and the storm's just loud. It can't hurt us in here." But even as he said it, Luke felt the familiar knot in his stomach. The job interview tomorrow was important, really important. After months of unstable work, this construction company had steady projects lined up, good pay, benefits, the kind of job that would let him provide better for Mia, the kind of job that would look good when the custody mediator asked about his stability next week. "I'm hungry," Mia said, pressing her hands to her stomach. "And it's loud." Luke glanced at his watch. 7:30. The hotel restaurant was still open, but he'd already spent more money than he'd planned just getting them here for the night. Tomorrow's interview was across town, too far to drive back and forth from their apartment, especially with this storm. "How about we see if there's a vending machine?" he suggested. "Maybe some crackers or—" The lights went out. Mia made a scared sound, and Luke was across the room in 2 steps, sitting beside her on the bed and pulling her close. "It's okay, baby. It's just the storm. The lights will come back on." Sure enough, a few seconds later, the lights flickered back to life. But now there was a new sound, a steady mechanical humming from somewhere in the building. "What's that noise?" Mia whispered. "Backup generators. That means the hotel's prepared for storms like this. We're definitely safe." Luke's phone buzzed with a text message. "The hotel's automated system. Due to weather-related power fluctuations, we've upgraded your room. New key cards available at front desk." He frowned. Upgraded sounded good, but he hoped it didn't mean more expensive. He'd already stretched his budget thin for this trip. "Come on, kiddo. Looks like we're moving to a different room." Mia perked up. Better room?" "Maybe. Let's go find out." They gathered their few belongings. Mia's backpack with her coloring books and stuffed elephant, Luke's duffel bag with his interview clothes, carefully pressed and hanging in the garment bag. Everything they owned for this trip fit on the small luggage cart Luke wheeled behind him as they headed for the elevator. "This is like an adventure," Mia said as the elevator climbed upward. "Right, Daddy?" "Right," Luke agreed, though his mind was on practical things. Would the new room cost more? Was this going to mess up his budget for the week? The elevator dinged softly and the doors opened. Luke checked the key card the front desk had given him. Suite 12A. This couldn't be right. Suites were expensive. There had to be a mistake. But the key card worked, and the heavy door swung open to reveal a space that made Luke's heart sink. This wasn't just a room. It was bigger than his entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the city. A living area with a cream-colored sofa and glass coffee table. A small kitchen area with granite countertops. And through an open doorway, he could see a bed that looked like it cost more than his truck. "Wow," Mia breathed. "It's like a castle." Luke was already backing toward the door, pulling the luggage cart with him. "Come on, sweetheart, there's been a mistake. This isn't our room." But as he turned, the cartwheel caught on the doorframe. He pulled harder, trying to free it, and the cart lurched forward. Luke stumbled, trying to keep his balance, and crashed directly into someone coming around the corner. Time slowed down. A woman, soft impact against his chest, the scent of something light and floral. She stumbled backward from the collision, and without thinking, Luke reached out to steady her, his hand catching her elbow. For a moment they were both perfectly still. Her dark eyes met his, wide with surprise. She was beautiful in a way that made him forget to breathe. Warm brown skin, delicate features, lips slightly parted in shock. Then, the building's generators gave a particularly loud thump, and the floor vibrated under their feet. The woman stepped back quickly, and Luke dropped his hand like he'd been burned. "I'm so sorry," he said, his words tumbling over each other. "I was just—" The keycard worked, but this can't be right. We're supposed to be in a regular room. I was trying to leave. Behind him, Mia peered around the luggage cart, her eyes huge. The woman took another small step back, smoothing her blazer with hands that trembled slightly. But when she spoke, her voice was steady and calm. "It's okay. No harm done." She glanced at the luggage cart, then at Mia. "The storm's been causing problems with the key system. You're probably not the only guest this happened to." The hallway behind her was noisy. Other guests moving around, someone complaining loudly about a leak in their ceiling. Luke could hear Rita's voice. Among the chaos, trying to solve everyone's problems at once. "We should go," Luke said. "Find the right room." But the woman, who was she? A guest? Hotel staff? Was looking at Mia with a gentle expression that made something tight in Luke's chest ease slightly. "That might take a while," she said. "The hallway's pretty crowded, and it sounds like they're dealing with more than one problem. Would you like to wait inside until they sort things out?" Luke hesitated. Everything about this felt wrong. The expensive suite, this woman who spoke like she belonged here, the way his hand still tingled from touching her arm. But Mia was pressed against his side, tired and overwhelmed by the noise in the hallway. And the woman was right. The chaos outside sounded like it would take time to resolve. "Just for a few minutes," he said finally, "until they have a room ready." She nodded and stepped back to let them enter fully. Luke wheeled the luggage cart inside and closed the door, immediately muffling the noise from the hallway. The difference was startling. Inside the suite, everything was quiet and warm and elegant. Mia looked around with wonder, taking in the soft lighting and the comfortable furniture. "Can I sit down?" she asked in a whisper. "Of course," the woman said before Luke could answer. "Make yourself comfortable." Mia climbed onto the big sofa and immediately looked smaller, like a little bird perched in a nest built for eagles. But she smiled, the first real smile Luke had seen from her since the storm started. "What's your name?" the woman asked, settling into the chair across from Mia. "Mia, I'm 7. "That's a pretty name. I'm Amara." Just Amara. No last name, no title. But the way she sat, the confidence in her posture, the expensive cut of her clothes, Luke was starting to get a picture that made him increasingly uncomfortable. "I'm Luke," he said, feeling like he should contribute something to the conversation. "And really, we appreciate this, but we don't want to impose." Amara looked at him, and for just a moment, something flickered across her face. Loneliness, maybe, or surprise, like she wasn't used to people worrying about imposing on her. "You're not imposing. Honestly, it's nice to have company during the storm." Before Luke could respond, there was a soft knock at the door. Amara went to answer it, and Luke heard a woman's voice in the hallway. "I brought extra towels, and I wanted to check." The voice stopped abruptly. "Come in, Evelyn," Amara said. "This is Luke and Mia. They're waiting for Rita to find them a room." A woman in her 30s stepped into the suite, carrying an armload of fluffy white towels. She was Asian American with short black hair and sharp, intelligent eyes that immediately took in Luke, Mia, and their luggage cart. "Oh," she said, and Luke didn't miss the way her gaze lingered on him. "Ms. Bennett, your father called while you were downstairs. He wants to discuss the, Riverside project tomorrow morning." "Ms. Bennett." The words hit Luke like cold water. He looked at Amara, really looked at her, and suddenly everything made sense. The perfect posture, the expensive clothes, the way she had offered to let strangers wait in what was clearly her home, not just a room. Bennett. As in Bennett Harbor Hotel, as in the family who owned this place and half a dozen others like it. He was standing in the personal suite of an heiress, and he'd just spent the last 10 minutes treating her like a regular person. Luke stood up quickly, his mind racing. "We should go." "Daddy?" Mia looked confused. "I thought we were waiting for the room lady." "Rita," Amara said quietly. "Her name is Rita, and she's still working on finding you a place." But Luke was already moving toward the luggage cart. This was exactly the kind of situation that could get twisted around, especially with the custody mediation coming up. Kayla's lawyer was already looking for any excuse to paint him as irresponsible or unstable. Being found in the hotel heiress's personal suite, even innocently, was not going to help his case. "I really appreciate your kindness," he said to Amara, trying to keep his voice steady. "But we should get out of your way." Amara watched him with those dark eyes, and Luke had the strange feeling that she understood exactly what he was thinking. She didn't argue or try to convince him to stay. Instead, she walked to the door and opened it. The hallway was still crowded, but not quite as chaotic as before. Rita was visible near the elevator, talking to an older couple who looked frustrated. "Rita will take good care of you," Amara said. "She's the best at what she does." Luke nodded, grateful that she was making this easy. But as he started to wheel the cart toward the door, Mia spoke up. "Thank you for letting us sit on your soft couch," she said solemnly to Amara. "It was really comfortable." Amara's stern expression softened immediately. She crouched down to Mia's level, bringing herself to eye level with the little girl. "You're very welcome. I hope you have a good night in your new room." "Will we see you tomorrow?" Mia asked with the innocent directness of children. Luke felt his cheeks burn. "Mia, we shouldn't." "Maybe," Amara said simply, "if you're staying another night." "We are. Daddy has a job meeting, and then we're going home." "Well then," Amara said, standing back up, "maybe I'll see you around the hotel." Luke managed an awkward smile. "Thank you again. Really." As they stepped into the hallway, the last thing Luke heard was the soft click of the suite door closing behind them. He tried not to think about the fact that Amara Bennett, a woman who could probably buy and sell him without noticing the expense, had just been kinder to him and his daughter than most people were on their best days. He tried not to think about the way her hand had felt under his when he steadied her, or how her eyes had seemed sad despite her smile. Most of all, he tried not to think about the way his heart was still beating just a little too fast. But as Rita hurried over with a bright smile and a new key card, Luke knew that forgetting Amara Bennett was going to be harder than he'd like. Much harder. Inside her suite, Amara closed the door and leaned against it, one hand pressed to her chest. She could still feel the warmth of Luke's hand on her arm, could still see the careful way he'd steadied her when they collided, making sure she didn't fall. It had been 10 years since a man had touched her, 10 years since she'd let anyone close enough to try. And now, in the space of 15 minutes, a stranger had broken through her defenses without even trying. A stranger who'd looked genuinely sorry to discover who she was, who'd gathered his daughter and left as soon as he understood the situation, not because he didn't like her, but because he was trying to protect himself. When was the last time someone had done that? When was the last time someone had been more worried about imposing on her than about what she could do for them? Amara walked to the windows and looked out at the storm. The rain was starting to lighten, but the wind still whipped through the trees lining the street below. In a few hours, the weather would clear, and tomorrow would dawn bright and clean. Luke and Mia would check out and go home to their regular life. Luke would go to his job interview and probably get hired because she'd seen the way he handled himself, careful and responsible and kind to his daughter. And Amara would go back to her carefully controlled world where every interaction was filtered through business considerations and family expectations. Her phone buzzed. A text from her father. "Call me when you get a chance. Need to discuss tomorrow's agenda." Amara looked at the phone for a long moment, then set it aside without responding. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. Tonight, for the first time in years, she wanted to hold on to something that had nothing to do with business or family or the careful image she'd spent so long building. Tonight, she wanted to remember what it felt like when someone looked at her like she was just a person. Just Amara. The storm had settled into a steady rhythm by the time Luke and Mia were finally settled in their new room on the 8th floor. It was nothing like the penthouse suite. 2 beds, a small table by the window, a bathroom just big enough for the essentials. But it was clean and comfortable and, most importantly, within Luke's budget. Mia was already in her pajamas, sitting cross-legged on her bed with her coloring book open in front of her. She was working on a picture of a castle, using a purple crayon to fill in what looked like towers. "This is the princess's room," she explained to Luke as he hung up his interview clothes in the small closet. "She lives at the top where she can see everything." Luke glanced at the picture, then at his daughter. "What kind of princess?" "The kind one. She helps people when they're lost in storms." Something squeezed tight in Luke's chest. "That sounds like a good kind of princess to be." Mia nodded seriously, then went back to her coloring. "Daddy? Was that lady a princess?" "What lady, sweetheart?" "The pretty lady with the soft couch. She lived at the top of the building." Luke sat down on the edge of his own bed, facing Mia. How did he explain that some people had so much money that they lived like fairy tale characters, while others worked every day just to keep a roof over their heads? "She's just a regular person," he said finally. "She just has a different kind of job than Daddy does." "What kind of job?" "She helps run the hotel, makes sure guests have a good place to stay." It was true, even if it wasn't the whole truth. Mia didn't need to know about inheritance and family wealth and the kind of life that was so far from their own experience that it might as well have been a fairy tale. "She was nice," Mia said, switching to a pink crayon for the princess's dress. "She didn't talk to me like I was stupid." "You're not stupid, Mia. You're one of the smartest kids I know." "I know, but some grown-ups forget that kids can understand things." She looked up at him with those serious gray eyes. She remembered. Luke felt that squeeze in his chest again, tighter this time. Mia was right. Amara had spoken to her like she was a real person, not just a cute accessory. She'd crouched down to Mia's level, looked her in the eye, treated her with the kind of respect that most adults forgot to show children. "Are you nervous about tomorrow?" Mia asked, changing the subject with the easy way kids had of moving from one thought to another. Luke's interview was at 9 in the morning with Hartley Construction. If everything went well, he'd be starting work on Monday. Steady employment with good benefits and room for advancement. It was exactly what they needed. "A little nervous," he admitted. but good nervous, the kind you get when something important might happen. Like when I had to read my story to the whole class? Exactly like that. Mia smiled and went back to her coloring. A few minutes later, she yawned hugely, the crayon nearly falling from her fingers. Time for bed, kiddo. She didn't argue, just closed the coloring book and slipped under the covers. Luke tucked her in, kissing her forehead and turning off the lamp beside her bed. Good night, sweetheart. Good night, Daddy. I hope you get the job tomorrow. Me too. Luke settled into his own bed with his phone, checking emails and going over his notes for the interview one more time. Everything looked good. His references were solid, his experience was relevant, and the company seemed like exactly the kind of place he wanted to work. But as he finally turned off the light and tried to sleep, his mind kept drifting back to those few minutes in the penthouse suite. The way Amara had handled the situation with such calm grace, the kindness in her voice when she spoke to Mia, the way her whole expression had changed when she realized Luke was trying to leave to avoid causing problems. He'd met plenty of wealthy people in his construction work, usually as the hired help working on their houses while they ignored him or treated him like part of the furniture. None of them had ever invited him to sit down. None of them had ever looked at his daughter like she mattered. Luke rolled over, pushing the thoughts away. Tomorrow was about the job interview and building a better future for Mia. Tonight's encounter with Amara Bennett was just one of those strange moments that sometimes happened, a brief connection that didn't mean anything beyond two people being decent to each other during a storm. But as sleep finally took hold, Luke found himself hoping he might see her again before they checked out. Just to say thank you properly, he told himself. Nothing more than that. The morning arrived gray and quiet, the storm having blown itself out sometime in the early hours. Luke woke at 6:30 to the sound of water dripping from the eaves outside their window, but when he looked out, the sky was already beginning to clear. Mia was still asleep, her dark blonde hair spread across the pillow, one arm wrapped around her stuffed elephant. Luke dressed quietly in jeans and a t-shirt, planning to grab coffee from the lobby and review his interview notes one more time before getting ready. The hotel felt different in the morning light. Calmer. The lobby buzzed with the quiet efficiency of a well-run business, staff moving purposefully, guests checking out or heading to breakfast, the soft murmur of normal conversation instead of last night's storm-driven chaos. Luke bought a cup of black coffee from the small cafe near the lobby and found a chair where he could see the elevators. He wasn't sure why he'd chosen that particular spot. He certainly wasn't waiting for anyone. At 6:40, the elevator doors opened and Amara stepped out. She looked different than she had last night. Her hair was down, falling in soft waves past her shoulders, and she wore dark jeans with a cream-colored sweater. Still elegant, but more approachable somehow. More like the woman who'd crouched down to talk to Mia instead of the hotel heiress who commanded penthouse suites. Their eyes met across the lobby, and for a moment, neither of them moved. Then Amara walked toward the cafe, and Luke found himself standing up. "Good morning," she said when she reached him. "How did you sleep? Was the room okay?" "It was perfect. Thank you for asking." Luke felt awkward standing there with his coffee, not sure what the protocol was for talking to someone like her in public. "And thank you again for last night. That was really kind of you." Amara waved a hand dismissively. "It wasn't anything special, just basic human decency." But Luke had lived enough of his life to know that basic human decency wasn't nearly as basic as it should be, especially not when it crossed the kinds of lines that separated their worlds. "How's Mia this morning?" Amara asked. "Still sleeping? She's not much of an early bird on weekends." Luke paused, then added, "She colored a picture of a princess last night, said it was the kind one who helps people during storms." Something soft and pleased flickered across Amara's face. "Smart girl." "She is. Sometimes I think she sees things more clearly than adults do." Amara nodded, then glanced toward the cafe counter. "I should get my coffee before the morning rush starts. Good luck with your job interview today." She started to walk away, but Luke found himself speaking before he could think better of it. "Would you—" He stopped, shook his head. "Never mind. It's not important." Amara turned back, one eyebrow raised in question. "It's just, Mia wanted to thank you properly for last night, for being so nice to her." Luke felt his cheeks warm. Kids, they don't understand social boundaries the way adults do. What kind of thank you did she have in mind? Nothing big, just she wanted to return something to you. Amara's expression grew curious. Return something? We didn't give her anything. Actually, you did. You gave her something she doesn't get very often. Which is? Someone treating her like she was worth listening to. The words hung between them, more honest than Luke had intended. He saw something shift in Amara's eyes, surprise maybe, or recognition of something she understood better than he'd expected. I'd be happy to accept her, thank you, Amara said quietly. What time is your interview? 9 o'clock? The lobby can get busy around 8:30 with checkout traffic. There's a reading nook near the fireplace. It's quieter there. Would that work? Luke nodded, not trusting his voice. There was something about the way she'd suggested it, not like she was doing them a favor, but like it was something she actually wanted to do. 8:15, she suggested. That would be perfect. Amara smiled, the first completely unguarded smile he'd seen from her. It changed her whole face, made her look younger and less carefully controlled. I'll see you then. Luke watched her walk to the cafe counter, noting the way the staff greeted her with genuine warmth, not just professional courtesy. Whatever else she might be, people who worked with her every day clearly liked her. That said something important about a person. At 8 o'clock, Luke was helping Mia get dressed when she announced that she had something important to do. I need to give the nice lady her book back, she said, pulling on her favorite purple sweater. What book, sweetheart? Mia pointed to her backpack, where Luke could see the corner of something sticking out. He pulled it out, a children's book with a bright cover showing a girl and a dragon sharing tea. Where did this come from? The lady gave it to me, from the bookshelf in the reading place. She said I could borrow it, but I should give it back. Mia looked up at him seriously. It's important to give things back when you borrow them. Luke stared at the book, trying to remember when this had happened. Then it came to him, yesterday morning, while he was on his job interview phone call with Hartley Construction. He'd left Mia with Amara for exactly 15 minutes, and somehow in that brief time, she'd given his daughter a book. She wrote my name in it, Mia added, opening the front cover to show Luke a sticky note with Mia written in elegant handwriting. But she said to bring it back so other kids could read it too. Luke felt that familiar tightness in his chest, the one that came whenever someone was unexpectedly kind to his daughter. In the chaos of the storm and the room mix-up, he'd forgotten about those 15 minutes, but Mia hadn't forgotten, and apparently neither had Amara. Well then, he said, we'd better make sure she gets it back. The reading nook was tucked into an alcove near the lobby fireplace, with child-sized chairs and shelves lined with books. Soft morning light filtered through tall windows, and the gas fireplace provided a gentle warmth that made the whole area feel cozy and safe. Amara was already there, sitting in one of the adult-sized chairs with a cup of coffee in her hands. When she saw them approaching, she set the cup aside and stood up. Good morning, Mia, she said, crouching down to the little girl's level again. How did you sleep? Really good. The bed was bouncy. Mia held out the book with both hands, like she was presenting something precious. I brought your book back. Thank you for letting me borrow it. Amara accepted the book with the same seriousness that Mia offered it. Did you like the story? Yes. The dragon wasn't scary at all. He was just lonely. Mia's face lit up with enthusiasm. And the girl shared her tea with him, and then they were friends. I like stories where people are nice to each other. Those are my favorite kinds of stories too, Amara said, glancing up at Luke with something that might have been understanding. Luke checked his watch. 8:20. He had just enough time to walk to his truck and drive across town to make his 9 o'clock appointment. We should let you get on with your morning, he said to Amara. I don't want to be late, but Mia wasn't ready to leave yet. Can I ask you something? She said to Amara. Of course. Are you sad? The question was so direct, so purely innocent, that Luke felt his breath catch. Mia, but Amara held up a gentle hand, her attention focused completely on the little girl in front of her. Why do you ask that? You have sad eyes sometimes, like when you think nobody's looking. Mia tilted her head, studying Amara's face with the serious concentration that children brought to important observations. Daddy gets sad eyes sometimes too. but they go away when we read stories together. Luke wanted to disappear into the floor. 7-year-olds had no filter, no understanding of the things adults didn't say to each other. But when he looked at Amara, she didn't seem offended or uncomfortable. She seemed surprised, like no one had asked her that question in a very long time. "I get lonely sometimes," Amara said honestly. "Grown-ups do, just like kids do. But talking to you and your daddy last night made me feel less lonely." Mia nodded like this made perfect sense to her. "Maybe we could read another story sometime, if you want to. Reading with people makes the sad eyes go away." Luke's heart squeezed tight. His daughter, with all her innocent wisdom, had just offered friendship to one of the wealthiest women in the city like it was the most natural thing in the world. "I would like that very much," Amara said, and her voice was soft in a way that made Luke believe she meant it. "Okay," Mia beamed. "Daddy's really good at reading voices. He does different ones for all the characters." Luke felt his cheeks burn. "Mia, I'm sure Ms. Bennett has important things to do." "Just Amara," she corrected, standing up. "And actually, I don't have anything particularly important planned for this afternoon. If your job interview goes well, maybe we could celebrate with a story." The offer hung in the air between them, and Luke found himself caught between wanting to accept and knowing he should decline. This woman lived in a different world than he did. She was kind, obviously, but kindness didn't bridge the gap between penthouse suites and construction jobs. "We'll see how the interview goes," he said finally, which wasn't exactly yes, but wasn't exactly no either. Amara seemed to understand the careful balance of his answer. "Good luck, Luke. I hope it goes exactly the way you want it to." As they walked toward the lobby, Mia slipped her hand into Luke's. "I like her, Daddy. I can tell. She listened to me like you do, like what I said was important." Luke squeezed his daughter's hand gently. "What you say is important, sweetheart. To me and to anyone smart enough to pay attention." But as they reached the hotel entrance, Luke found himself hoping that his interview would go well for more reasons than just the job itself. Maybe, just maybe, they'd get a chance to read another story together. And maybe those sad eyes that Mia had noticed would smile again. Amara watched through the tall lobby windows as Luke's pickup truck pulled out of the parking lot, windshield wipers clearing away the last drops of rain from the night before. She stood there longer than she needed to, thinking about Mia's direct question and her own honest answer. "Are you sad?" When was the last time someone had asked her that? When was the last time she'd been able to give an honest answer? "Amara?" Rita approached from the front desk, holding a tablet and looking apologetic. "I'm so sorry to bother you, but we need to talk about last night." Amara turned away from the window, pushing thoughts of Luke and Mia aside. Business, reality, the careful world she'd built around herself. "What about it?" "The keycard mix-up. I know it caused problems, and I take full responsibility. The system glitch shouldn't have happened, and I should have caught it before." "Rita," Amara's voice was gentle but firm. "Stop. These things happen during storms. No one was hurt, no one was upset, and we handled it professionally. That's what matters." Rita looked surprised, like she'd been expecting a lecture or worse. "But Mr. Bennett called this morning. He mentioned something about a photo." Amara felt a familiar knot form in her stomach. "What kind of photo?" "I'm not sure. Someone posted something in one of those neighborhood social media groups. You know how people like to gossip about the hotel guests. He said he'd handle it, but he wanted you to know." Of course there was a photo. Of course someone had their phone out during the chaos last night, and of course it would make its way to her father before she'd even finished her morning coffee. "Thanks for letting me know," Amara said. "Don't worry about the key system. Just make sure IT runs a full diagnostic this afternoon." Rita nodded and headed back to the front desk, but Amara could see the worry still etched on her face. Good employees always took problems personally, even when they weren't their fault. Amara's phone buzzed, a text from her father. "We need to talk. My office, 10 a.m. She looked at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. Whatever conversation her father wanted to have could wait until she was ready for it. Instead, she walked back to the reading nook where she'd left her coffee. The book Mia had returned was still sitting on the small table. The Dragon Who Loved Tea Parties. Amara picked it up and opened to the first page, reading the story that had made a 7-year-old smile. It was a simple tale about friendship and kindness, about looking past appearances to see the heart underneath. The kind of story that reminded readers, young and old, that the best things in life usually came from the most unexpected places. Like storm-stranded guests who treated her like a person instead of a position. Like little girls who asked direct questions with innocent hearts. Like single fathers who steadied her when she stumbled and then worried about imposing on her time. Amara closed the book and held it against her chest, making a decision that surprised her with its certainty. If Luke's interview went well, she was going to take Mia up on her offer to read stories together. Not because it was good for business or family relations or any of the 1,000 careful considerations that usually guided her choices, but because for the first time in years, she wanted to do something purely because it might make her happy. And maybe, if she was very lucky, it might chase away those sad eyes that a wise little girl had noticed, at least for a little while. The Hartley construction office was a converted warehouse on the industrial side of town, with concrete floors and metal beams visible in the high ceiling. Luke sat across from Mike Hartley, a weathered man in his 50s who looked like he'd spent most of his life working with his hands. "Your references are solid," Mike was saying, flipping through a folder that contained Luke's work history. "Tom Rodriguez says you're the most reliable guy he ever had on his crew. Never missed a day, always stayed late when a job needed finishing." Luke nodded, trying to keep his expression calm even though his heart was beating fast. This was going well, better than he'd dared to hope. "The work we do here is steady," Mike continued. "Mostly commercial stuff. Office buildings, schools, some residential developments. Benefits kick in after 90 days, and there's room to move up for someone who shows initiative." "That sounds exactly like what I'm looking for," Luke said. "Steady work, room to grow. I've got a daughter, so reliability is important to me." Mike's expression softened slightly. "How old?" 7. "She's the best part of my life." "Kids change everything, don't they?" Mike closed the folder and leaned back in his chair. "Here's the thing, Luke. I've got 3 other guys I'm interviewing this week. All of them have good references. All of them need the work. What makes you different?" Luke had prepared for this question, but now that the moment was here, he found himself thinking not about rehearsed answers but about last night, about Mia asking Amara if she was sad, about the way Amara had crouched down to talk to his daughter like her words mattered. "I show up," Luke said finally. "Not just physically, but completely. When I'm on a job, I'm thinking about how to make it better, how to solve problems before they become bigger problems. And I care about the people I work with, the crew, the clients, everyone involved." Mike nodded slowly. "Tom mentioned that about you. Said you were the guy who'd notice if someone was having a bad day and find a way to help without making a big deal about it. We all need help sometimes. Construction sites work better when people look out for each other. When can you start?" The question caught Luke off guard. He'd been preparing for more interview, more questions, maybe a "we'll call you in a few days." "Monday morning," he said without hesitation. Mike grinned. "Good answer. 7 a.m. sharp. Bring steel-toed boots and your own tools. We'll start you on the Morrison School project, new elementary school on the east side." They shook hands, and Luke walked out of the office feeling like his feet weren't quite touching the ground. Steady. Work. Good pay. Benefits for Mia. Everything he'd been hoping for. As he drove back toward the hotel, Luke found himself thinking about Amara's offer to read stories that afternoon. Part of him, the practical part that had learned to be careful about crossing social lines, said he should pick up Mia, check out of the hotel, and drive home. Thank Amara politely if they saw her, but keep things simple. But another part of him remembered the way Mia's face had lit up when she talked about reading together. His daughter made friends easily, but she was also careful about who she trusted completely. The fact that she'd connected so quickly with Amara said something important. And if he was honest with himself, Luke wanted to see Amara again too. Not because of who she was or what she represented, but because of the way she'd made both him and Mia feel, like they mattered, like their presence was welcome instead of tolerated. When was the last time he'd felt that way around someone new? Amara was in her office, a smaller space behind the front desk that served as her working headquarters, when Evelyn knocked on the open door. "Your father's here," Evelyn said, her expression carefully neutral. "He's waiting in the lobby." Amara looked up from the quarterly report she'd been reviewing. "Tell him I'll be out in 5 minutes." Evelyn hesitated. "He seems concerned about something." Of course he did. Tom Bennett had built his business by being concerned about everything that might possibly affect the family's reputation or bottom line. It was a useful trait in a businessman, but it made him an exhausting father sometimes. 5 minutes, Amara repeated, turning back to her computer screen. When she finally walked out to meet him, her father was standing near the windows, hands clasped behind his back, studying the lobby like he was cataloging everything that might need improvement. At 58, Tom Bennett still looked like the college football player he'd once been, tall, broad-shouldered, with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Dad?" Amara said, walking over to kiss his cheek. "This is unexpected." "Is it?" Tom turned to look at her, and Amara could see the careful control in his expression that meant they were about to have what he called a serious conversation. "Let's talk in the office," she suggested, but Tom shook his head. "Here's fine. More private than you might think." He was right. The lobby was busy enough that their conversation would be lost in the general noise, but not so crowded that anyone could overhear specific words. "There was a photo posted online last night," Tom said without preamble. "Someone in the hotel during the storm. You, a man, and a child in the hallway outside your suite." Amara kept her expression calm, even though she could feel her heart rate picking up. And people talk, Amara. They make assumptions. They create stories where none exist." "What kind of stories?" Tom's jaw tightened slightly. "The kind that question your judgment. The kind that suggest you might be involved with a guest in ways that could affect your professional credibility." Heat flashed through Amara's chest, anger mixed with something that might have been shame, though she couldn't figure out why she should feel ashamed of being kind to a stranded family during a storm. "There was a keycard error," she said, keeping her voice level. "A guest and his daughter were mistakenly given access to my suite. I let them wait inside until the front desk could sort out proper accommodations. That's called customer service." "I'm sure that's exactly what happened," Tom said, "but perception matters as much as reality in this business, maybe more." Amara studied her father's face, looking for the warmth that had been there when she was a child, when he'd taught her to play chess and told her she could be anything she wanted to be. It was still there, buried under layers of business concerns and family reputation management, but it was getting harder to find. "What do you want me to do?" she asked. "Be careful. Professional boundaries exist for good reasons." Tom's expression softened slightly. "I'm not saying you did anything wrong. I'm saying that appearances matter, especially for someone in your position." Before Amara could respond, the lobby doors opened and Luke walked in with Mia at his side. Even from across the room, Amara could see the smile on his face, the kind of genuine happiness that came from good news. Tom followed her gaze, and his expression grew thoughtful. "Is that him?" he asked quietly. Amara nodded, not trusting her voice. Luke was scanning the lobby, clearly looking for someone. When his eyes found hers, his smile grew even brighter, and he said something to Mia that made the little girl bounce on her toes with excitement. "He doesn't look like someone who's trying to take advantage of anything," Tom observed. "He's not," Amara said firmly. "He's a good man trying to provide for his daughter." Tom was quiet for a moment, watching as Luke and Mia approached the reading nook. "How do you know that?" "Because I pay attention to how people treat children and service staff. Because he was more worried about imposing on me than impressing me. Because his daughter feels safe enough with him to be completely herself. And because you like him." It wasn't a question, and Amara didn't try to deny it. "And because I like him." Tom sighed, the sound of a father who wanted to protect his daughter from a world that was often harder than it needed to be. "Just be careful," he said finally. "Not because I don't trust your judgment, but because I know how cruel people can be when they want to tear someone down." He kissed her forehead and walked toward the exit, pausing at the door to look back. "For what it's worth," he said, "he looks at you the way a good man should look at a woman he respects." Then he was gone, leaving Amara standing in the middle of the lobby with her heart beating too fast and her carefully controlled world feeling suddenly fragile. Across the room, Mia waved at her with the enthusiasm of someone who had absolutely no idea that her presence had just become a matter of family business discussion. Amara waved back, made a decision that had nothing to do with business concerns or reputation management, and walked toward the reading nook. "Miss Amara," Mia launched herself across the small space between the chairs, wrapping her arms around Amara's waist in an enthusiastic hug that caught Amara completely off guard. For a moment, Amara stood frozen. Physical affection wasn't something she was used to. Her world was full of handshakes and careful air kisses, professional distances carefully maintained. But Mia's hug was warm and genuine and completely uncomplicated, and before she could overthink it, Amara found herself hugging back. "I take it the interview went well?" Amara said to Luke over Mia's head. Luke's grin was answer enough, but he said, "I got the job. Start Monday morning." "That's wonderful," Amara said, and meant it. There was something deeply satisfying about watching good things happen to good people. "Congratulations." "Thank you." Luke's expression grew more serious. "I know we talked about reading stories, but if you're busy—" "I'm not busy," Amara said quickly. "I mean, I am, but nothing that can't wait. Would you like to find somewhere more comfortable? The reading nook is designed for children." Mia pulled back from the hug, looking up at Amara with bright eyes. "Can we go to your castle room? It had the biggest couch I've ever seen." Luke's cheeks reddened. "Mia, we can't invite ourselves." "Actually," Amara said, surprising herself, "that's not a bad idea. It's quieter up there, and I have a better selection of books." Luke hesitated, and Amara could see the internal debate playing out on his face. The practical concerns, the social boundaries, the careful distance he'd learned to maintain. "Just for an hour," she said gently. "Just some stories and maybe hot chocolate. Nothing complicated." "Hot chocolate?" Mia's eyes went wide. "The fancy kind with marshmallows." "The fanciest kind," Amara promised. Luke looked at his daughter's excited face, then at Amara's carefully hopeful expression, and Amara watched him make the same kind of choice she'd just made, the kind that had nothing to do with what was smart or safe or socially appropriate, and everything to do with what felt right. "1 hour," he said finally, "and then we should head home." 1 hour, Amara agreed. But as they walked toward the elevator together, Mia chattering excitedly about which story they should read first, Amara found herself hoping that 1 hour would stretch into something longer, something that might fill the quiet spaces in her carefully controlled life with laughter and warmth and the kind of uncomplicated connection she hadn't realized she'd been missing. The elevator doors closed around them, carrying them upward toward whatever came next. The penthouse suite felt different in the afternoon light, softer somehow, with golden sunlight streaming through the tall windows, and the city spread out below like a postcard. Mia pressed her nose against the glass, marveling at how small everything looked from up high. "It's like being a bird," she said in wonder. "Do you ever feel like flying when you look out here?" Amara paused in the middle of arranging throw pillows on the sofa. "Sometimes I feel like I'm floating," she admitted, "especially at night when all the lights are on." Luke stood near the kitchen area, hands in his pockets, still looking like he wasn't entirely sure he belonged there. The space was beautiful, but intimidating. All clean lines and expensive furniture that probably cost more than he made in a year. "Make yourself comfortable," Amara said, noticing his hesitation. "The couch is meant to be sat on, not just admired." "Everything's so nice," Luke said. "I'm afraid to touch anything." Amara stopped what she was doing and really looked at him. There was no envy in his expression, no resentment about the difference in their circumstances, just the careful respect of someone who understood the value of things and didn't want to cause damage. "It's just furniture," she said gently. "Expensive furniture, maybe, but still just things. The important stuff is what happens with the people who use it." She walked to the kitchen and started pulling ingredients from the refrigerator: milk, real vanilla, good chocolate. "Mia, do you want to help me make the hot chocolate?" "Can I?" Mia bounced over, climbing onto one of the bar stools at the kitchen island. "Daddy and I make hot chocolate sometimes, but we use the packets." "Packets work perfectly well," Amara said, shooting a quick smile toward Luke. "But this way is more fun because you get to do the mixing." Luke finally settled onto the edge of the sofa, watching as Amara guided Mia through the process of warming milk and stirring in chocolate chips until they melted into rich, dark sweetness. There was something hypnotic about the domestic scene, his daughter chattering happily while a woman he barely knew patiently answered every question and let Mia help with each step. "Why do you live so high up?" Mia asked as she stirred the pot under Amara's careful supervision. "I work in the hotel, so it's convenient to live here too," Amara explained, "and I like being able to see the whole city. It helps me feel connected to everything that's happening." "Don't you get lonely, all by yourself up here?" The question was innocent, but Luke saw the way Amara's hands stilled for just a moment. Out of the mouths of babes, his daughter had a gift for asking the questions adults learned not to voice. "Sometimes," Amara said honestly, "but having work I care about helps, and having visitors like you makes it feel less lonely." Mia nodded solemnly. "Daddy gets lonely sometimes too, even when I'm right there. But it's different when he thinks I'm not looking." Luke felt his cheeks warm. "Mia, it's okay, Daddy. Everybody gets lonely. That's why we need friends." She looked up at Amara with complete seriousness. "Do you want to be friends with us?" The question hung in the air, simple and direct in the way only children could manage. Amara looked at Mia, then at Luke, and Luke could see something vulnerable in her expression, hope mixed with uncertainty, like she wasn't entirely sure how to answer. "I would like that very much," Amara said finally, "if your daddy thinks it's okay." Both females turned to look at Luke, and he found himself caught between the practical voice in his head that warned about complications and the warmth in his chest that said some risks were worth taking. "I think it's okay," he said quietly. Mia beamed. "Good. Now we can read stories and you won't be lonely anymore." If only it were that simple, Luke thought. But as he watched his daughter and Amara finish making hot chocolate together, Mia carefully spooning marshmallows into 3 mugs while Amara divided the chocolate mixture, he found himself wishing it could be exactly that simple. They settled onto the large sofa with their mugs and a stack of picture books Amara had retrieved from a shelf in what she called her reading corner, a comfortable chair by the windows with a small bookcase nearby. "I like to read here when I can't sleep," she explained. "Sometimes adult books, but children's books too. They remind me that most problems have solutions and most stories end happily." Mia curled up between them, her legs tucked under her, marshmallow foam on her upper lip. "What story should we read first?" Luke found himself relaxing despite the surreal nature of the situation. This was just 3 people sharing hot chocolate and books on a Saturday afternoon. The fact that they were sitting in a penthouse suite overlooking the city didn't change the fundamental simplicity of the moment. "You pick," he said to Mia. "It's your celebration." Mia selected a book about a little girl who befriended a lonely dragon, and Luke began reading in the voice he'd perfected over years of bedtime stories. Different tones for each character, dramatic pauses for suspense, gentle modulation that kept Mia engaged without being overwhelming. Amara listened with the same attention Mia gave to the story, and Luke found himself wondering, when was the last time an adult had heard him read aloud? Probably not since Mia was a toddler, and he'd sometimes read to her while his ex-wife was in the room. "You're really good at that," Amara said when he finished. "Mia's right. You do different voices for everyone." "Daddy's the best reader in the whole world," Mia said loyally. "He makes all the characters feel real." Luke felt that familiar tightness in his chest, the overwhelming love he felt for his daughter mixed with the weight of wanting to be everything she needed him to be. "Your turn," Mia said to Amara, selecting another book from the stack. "I want to hear your reading voice." Amara accepted the book, a story about a mouse who wanted to be an opera singer, and Luke settled back to listen. Her voice was different from his, more measured and precise, but she caught the rhythm of the story and made it flow in a way that held Mia's complete attention. As she read, Luke found himself studying her profile, the concentration on her face as she navigated the mouse's musical adventure, the way she glanced at Mia every few sentences to make sure she was following along, the genuine pleasure she seemed to take in the silly rhymes and colorful illustrations. This wasn't performance or obligation. She was enjoying herself. When she finished, Mia clapped enthusiastically. "That was good. You made the mouse sound really brave." "Thank you," Amara said, looking pleased. "I haven't read children's books aloud in a very long time." "Why not?" Mia asked with characteristic directness. "I don't have children of my own, and I don't know many families with little ones." Mia considered this seriously. That's sad. Reading stories is one of the best things about being alive. Luke bit back a smile. His daughter had strong opinions about literature. Maybe you could read to more kids, Mia continued, warming to her theme. Like at schools or libraries, lots of kids would love to hear stories from someone who lives in a castle. It's not exactly a castle, Amara said gently. It's close enough, and you have the princess voice for it. Amara laughed, a real laugh, not the polite version Luke had heard her use with hotel staff. Princess voice? You know, kind and patient and like you really care about the story. Princess voice. Luke watched Amara process this assessment, saw something shift in her expression, like Mia had just given her an idea she'd never considered before. That's actually not a bad suggestion, Amara said slowly. I wonder if any of the local schools do reading programs. See, Mia said triumphantly. I told you reading was important. They spent the next hour working through the stack of books, taking turns and building an easy rhythm that felt natural despite how new it was. Mia contributed commentary and questions, Luke provided dramatic voices, and Amara offered gentle observations that showed she was really thinking about each story. By the time they reached the last book, the afternoon light had grown golden and long, painting the sweet and warm hues that made everything look softer around the edges. One more? Mia asked hopefully, even though her eyelids were starting to droop from the warmth and comfort. Luke checked his watch. They'd been there for almost 3 hours. We should probably head home, sweetheart. It's a long drive, and you have school Monday. Mia's face fell, but she didn't argue. She was good about transitions when Luke gave her clear expectations. Thank you for the stories and the hot chocolate, she said to Amara, climbing down from the sofa to give her another one of those fierce, uncomplicated hugs. This was the best part of our hotel adventure. Amara hugged her back, and Luke could see that she was getting more comfortable with the physical affection. Thank you for letting me be part of your adventure. As they gathered their things and prepared to leave, Luke felt an unexpected reluctance. The afternoon had been easy in a way he hadn't experienced in a long time. No stress, no performance, no walking on eggshells around someone else's expectations. Just simple human connection with someone who seemed to genuinely enjoy their company. Drive safe, Amara said as they waited for the elevator. And congratulations again on the job. Thank you for everything. Luke paused, then added, This was really nice. I hope we'll see you again sometime. Something flickered across Amara's face. Hope, maybe, or uncertainty about whether that was a real possibility or just politeness. I'd like that, she said quietly. The elevator arrived, and as the doors closed between them, Luke found himself already missing the warmth of her smile and the sound of Mia's laughter echoing through the elegant space. In the lobby, Mia slipped her hand into his as they walked toward the exit. Daddy? Yeah, sweetheart. I really like her. Can we be her friend for real? Luke looked down at his daughter's earnest face, then back toward the elevators that led to Amara's carefully controlled world. I hope so, he said honestly. I really hope so. But as they drove home through the evening traffic, Luke couldn't shake the feeling that hoping might not be enough. Their lives were moving in different directions, with different pressures and different expectations. Still, for 3 perfect hours, those differences hadn't mattered at all, and that was something worth holding on to, even if he wasn't sure how to make it last.